So if you're an existing Panasonic user and thinking about upgrading, or maybe you're coming into the Panasonic system for the first time and you hear that the G9 II, the S5 II, and the S5 IIX have the best autofocus, so those are your options, right? But you still aren't sure which one to pick after hearing the arguments. Well, I think there is one thing that people don't talk about enough when it comes to Micro Four Thirds versus full frame, when it comes to Panasonic, which is the lenses. Because at the end of the day, if you invest into a system, you're going to be stuck with those lenses for better or for worse. So I want to talk about the 5 advantages of Micro Four Thirds and full frame lenses, and hopefully this can help you guys decide on which system you should go with, because at the end of the day, you can't really use the full frame lenses on Micro Four Thirds bodies or vice versa. So the first advantage for Micro Four Thirds is going to be just, it's got a longer legacy, a longer history. It was joint developed by Olympus, so you've got a bunch of Olympus glass that you can use that has a little more character, slightly different image quality. You've got Sigma that made some 2.8 and 1.4 lenses, as well as all the great Panasonic and Panasonic Leica collaboration glass made over a much longer period of time. So you can get a bunch of different stuff from Panasonic, Lumix, Olympus, whoever, for Micro Four Thirds from this vast history of lenses that has been, made for the system. Although keep in mind that not all of them may perform the same as the others. There's just more functional and clear design choices when it comes to the image, the autofocus performance, the character of the full frame lenses that you're always going to get something pretty good. Even like the basic kit lens, the 20 to 60 is really solid, or their super zoom 28 to 200 still has very good image quality for what it is. So you can get some really rough lenses on Micro Four Thirds that are a little bit older, but the newer lenses have a lot more consistent image quality, consistent look, and consistent results. But to flip that back to another advantage for a Micro Four Thirds, there's a lot more unique lenses in the system. And this kind of comes with the variety I talked about earlier, but yeah, you can get a tiny budget. I mean, let me find one. I'm back. Oh, my chair. But yeah, guys, so this is a third-party lens, but look at this tiny little Laowa. You cannot get a full-frame lens of that size. Or this tiny kit lens for the G100. It's a zoom lens. Look at it pop up. So much fun. Or even like a really high-quality Leica lens for the G100. Video coming soon, but we got an aperture ring, and it's tiny. It's not that much bigger than that zoom we just looked at. Look at this thing. And you can get the big professional 1.7 nearly full frame look background blur lenses as well. So what I'm trying to say is the specialty and the variety and the unique lenses with really cool features, there's just a lot more of that on Micro Four Thirds. So if you're a really creative person, you want to try new things all the time, there's just so many crazy lenses for Micro Four Thirds that it's worth looking at the system just for that, in my opinion. Yeah, like the full frame has like all of its bases covered, but is not pushing the envelope. We've got a very good and elevated 24 to 70, but it's still a 24 to 70. You know what I mean? And while there is all these crazy unique lenses, at the end of the day, the S series and the S series lenses are hyper dedicated to video and videographers. You've got your clutch focuses, you've got your parafocal zooming in with the 24 to 70, the 24 to 105, all those sort of things. You've got, linear focus, which is not as common with some Micro Four Thirds lenses. You've got, really consistent image quality with the 24 to 70, the 70 to 200. You've got the similar image quality, specs, size, and filter threads on those 1.8 primes. So the entire system of the S series, while it can do amazing photos for sure, has some of the best designed video lenses, not just for a Lumix camera, but in the entire camera world, in my opinion. I think they're super underrated. I think Micro Four Thirds is too, but especially the S series is just chef's kiss. But that being said, people like big lenses, but they like small stuff too. And like we talked about before, the size of Micro Four Thirds for travel, for convenience, for putting in crazy places, there just isn't a small S series body, and there aren't really that many small S series lenses either. And so if you're looking to do travel or to have multiple different options in your bag, you're going to be able to bring a lot more Micro Four Thirds gear with you on average and different lenses than full frame. Not just because there's more options, but because they're just physically smaller. And I don't always think size is an advantage, but if you prefer small cameras or you need smaller lenses for whatever situation, Micro Four Thirds is certainly the way to go. Because I mean, we talked about this earlier, but look at this. Look how tiny it is. With full frame, you can't get smaller. With Micro Four Thirds, you can get the big professional lenses if you want to. So there you go. Something that you might really care about, enough to the point where I'm going to make its own bullet point, is just the background blur. Let's be honest, you're always going to have an easier time getting background blur on a full frame camera with the same lenses or even slightly different lenses. With Micro Four Thirds, yes, you can get down to the 0.95s, the f1.2s to get close to that full frame look, but there's 0.95 lenses for full frame too. So if you're going for just the easiest, most maximum background blur ever, I mean, like this is a 1.8 lens right now, and on Micro Four Thirds, well, let's just do it. Because 1.8 on Micro Four Thirds looks a lot more like an f3.5, which is what this is. So if you're looking for, oh, I went the wrong way. So if you're looking for maximum blurry backgrounds like a f1.8, f1.4, or faster on a full frame camera, it's not always appropriate, but it is genuinely useful at times. So if you're going to need the most background blur, the easiest background blur, an f2.8 on a zoom lens or an f1.8 on a prime for full frame is really genuinely pretty helpful in certain situations. And if that's something you're interested in, these are probably the cameras for you, because with Micro Four Thirds, you really got to work for it sometimes. But hey, maybe you're more in the budget camp. And in my opinion, the budget sort of setup for Micro Four Thirds is a lot easier to get. There's a lot more solid camera bodies for a B cam, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about lenses. There's a lot of cheap lenses. And so if you're mostly working in the 24 to 70-ish kind of range, but you only occasionally do longer reach, you could easily get something like the Leica 12 to 60, or even the cheaper Lumix 12 to 60, or the Lumix 14 to 140 to give you a 28 to 280 zoom range right in your hand. Like, there's a lot of used lenses, a lot of cheap lenses. If you need a cheap wide angle, a cheap telephoto lens, you're trying to build your kit out and get more variety, even if, you know, you don't necessarily need that stuff, or you're trying to figure things out, it's a little bit more forgiving because there's so many used lenses out there, and older lenses and more budget, beginner-friendly lenses. Everything in the S series is at a certain level of quality, which is good, but that means every lens tends to be a little bit more expensive, even on the used market for the most part. But if the past is in Micro Four Thirds, depending on who you talk to, a lot of people are going to say that the kind of future is full frame. And if you look at the releases from Panasonic, I'm not going to say Micro Four Thirds is dead. I don't think it's dead at all. But if we have to be realistic about which one of these two systems is going to do the most growing, it's going to be the S series. And so if you're thinking about a system that more companies are investing in or contributing to, and what's going to provide more cameras for more upgrade paths, the safe bet is the S series. I think all the advantages of Micro Four Thirds is really not going anywhere, and I don't think the cameras are going anywhere for a very long time. But if we had to pick one, I think most people would say there is a little bit more assurance that the S series is going to continue onwards a little bit longer, maybe, than Micro Four Thirds. I hope this isn't controversial. I hope you guys know what I'm saying. I don't want to rub anybody the wrong way, but you know, with people like Leica and Lumix and Sigma, I'm looking at my list, Blackmagic, DJI, these are all companies that have signed on to the Element Alliance that are going to be contributing technology and lenses and cameras. And you really just don't see anybody contributing much to Micro Four Thirds anymore besides Panasonic and Olympus, which has always been like that. So Micro Four Thirds has a lot of advantages. There's more options, there's more variety in the options, there's very specialized lenses, very unique, quirky lenses with character, and they can be found big, medium, small, super cheap, super expensive, and everything in between. With the S series, there's less options overall, but those options are very focused when it comes to their design philosophy. But those options are very focused when it comes to their design philosophy, what they're trying to accomplish, and have a certain level of image quality, autofocus performance, and all that sort of stuff that you might see a little bit more and maybe a little bit too much variety in the Micro Four Thirds world. So at the end of the day, I can't really tell you which option you should go with. I can't tell you what's better, but that's my thoughts on those lenses. Personally, I love the unique and, massive variety of the Micro Four Thirds lenses, but it's hard to argue with some of the design choices that Panasonic have been able to make with the S series cameras. So let me know down below, guys, what's your favorite lens on each system? And what system do you think is more viable, more helpful, more fun? And, which one would you go with? I'm really curious to hear. So if this video helped you at all, it is legally binding for you to leave a like and a comment. I'm sorry I don't make the rules.